A number of years ago, I was invited to a house party with a group of people I was just starting to get to know. I remember it was fall, so I brought this really great apple-infused bourbon. I thought, you know what, I'm going to show up with something really thoughtful versus something everyone else was bringing, like wine or vodka. You know, group acceptance is a fine line in the gay community, and you do not want to fall on the wrong side of that line. I remember chatting around the kitchen table, munching on my snacks, sipping my drink, and doing my best to keep up. The host pulled me aside, and I don't even know what led him to say this or what the context was, but he said, "You're in the group now, David." And it felt so good. I mean, especially since I was only a few years out. Finding your place early on like that isn't easy. And coming out late just makes it harder, especially in a tight urban community. And you know what happened after that? I wasn't invited back to anything. Not to that group, not to anything else they did. I mean, they were still getting together. I saw all their amazing posts. It left me wondering, was it the way I looked? Was it because I was single? Was something wrong with me? Like maybe showing up, giving your best doesn't really get you anywhere. It made me want to keep to myself more, not because I didn't want connection, but because I had been burned by it. And then the pattern just repeated. Another weekend alone, another reminder that trying doesn't always lead to belonging. And that hurt more than I had ever expected. Not because I thought those people in those groups would eventually become my lifelong best friends, but because it confirmed this quiet fear that I had carried for years. I will never be chosen. I will always be last. And maybe this is something that you've thought about yourself. Like, oh, great, just what I need, scraps. You know, so nice of them to think of me at the last minute like that. These kinds of thoughts are painful. And when they come up, they start feeling like the truth. And that's when you start shrinking your expectations out of sheer self-protection. I show up, I give, I try, but I'm still on the outside looking in. Have you ever felt like that? And seriously, it leaves you wondering, why bother? First, there's this experience of feeling like you're always the one who's initiating. You're reaching out, you're planning things, you're offering support. And sure, you might tell yourself you're just being thoughtful. And then you start wondering if they'd even notice if you stop trying. And then over time, you start to feel unnoticed, invisible, or worse, forgettable. And there's this letdown that comes from giving so much of yourself without ever feeling you're being reciprocated. You send the text, you plan the dinner, you accommodate their schedule, and they cancel, or they ghost, or they just don't seem to be that interested at all. And while you try to brush it off, it just chips away at your self-respect. And finally, there's the hope. That spark that's maybe this time it'll feel different. That this person, this group, this connection will finally be the one that feels mutual. But then it plays out just like it always does, and you're back where you started. That kind of emotional whiplash is exhausting. It leaves you cautious. You're closed off. You're convinced it's safer not to try at all. And then resentment sets in. It's like a slow, persistent buildup of bitterness, disappointment, and hurt. You know, when you've given your best and it barely registers, and as best as you can shake it off and tell yourself it's not personal, it always feels like it is. So let's see if we can unpack how resentment takes root and what makes it stick around. First, it's not like resentment is super easy to spot in the first place. It's not like a big flare-up of drama. It's more like a quiet thing that builds over time. It's anger though, and it's anger that has nowhere to go. It hangs there because you and I never got the closure or the acknowledgement or the care that we needed at the time of the offense. Psychologists talk about mattering, and it's exactly what it sounds like. Feeling like you matter. You're seen. You're appreciated. And mattering matters because you know what? It is a basic human need. And when we don't feel it, after a while we start to feel invisible, constantly being overlooked. And it can eventually feel very draining, like leaving us feeling raw, exposed, and even ashamed for not even mattering at all. Have things ever felt lopsided with friends or partners? Like you're always the one checking in, planning things, making them feel regarded. But it never flows the other way, does it? Until you stop and they notice that something is off. It just leaves you feeling empty after a while. And so what do you do about it? I don't have the perfect answer, but what I do know is that resentment isn't just something that you feel, it's something that you carry. And if we're not careful, we start carrying it into every relationship, every invitation we get, every moment where someone actually does try. So maybe the first step isn't fixing it. Maybe it's just paying attention to when it shows up, how it builds, where it hides, so it doesn't quietly keep running the show. Does any of this resonate? You're not too sensitive. You're human. Recognizing resentment like this is an important first step toward the emotional freedom that everyone wants. Because once it's out there, you don't have to be owned by it. You get to decide how much space it takes up. In fact, studies have shown that labeling negative emotions like resentment can actually activate regions of the brain that are associated with emotional regulation. In other words, putting pain into words can actually help you dial down that part of the brain that processes those triggering moments and turns up the part that helps you better manage it. So in a very real way, naming what you feel can help you start to heal and gain perspective. So maybe next time that bitterness creeps in, pause. Take a breath. Say, I feel resentful because I wanted to matter more than I felt I did. Resentment is not a comfortable topic to talk about, especially when it comes to feeling like you don't matter. If this stirred something for you, know that just letting yourself feel it is a brave first step. If you feel comfortable, leave a comment about your experience, or simply journal it out or speak it out loud to yourself privately, because you deserve to feel seen. And this is how you can start taking your power back.